All right. So would you guys like to talk about where you were stumped, or?
So we were trying to come up with something that was in Buddhism where we had to compare. And so I threw out, how do the two impermanent and emptiness compare?
Ooh, good. And
So,
what did you find? What did you guys find?
well, I think they're mutually exclusive, that
Mutually
there's nothing
exclusive.
that is an emptiness, there is nothing that is an
Uh-huh.
emptiness, that
Uh-huh.
is
Uh-huh.
impermanent.
Ah, okay. And what did other people think?
Well, we got stumped by that.
Uh-huh.
Because,
Okay.
initially Venerable presented those two, and I said, I can't think of something that is impermanent and emptiness, my cup. And then Venerable like pushed me a little bit, and she's like, well, is emptiness a permanent phenomena or impermanent phenomena? I was like, well, I know emptiness is a permanent phenomena.
Mm-hmm.
So then, so I can't then think of anything that is both an impermanent and permanent phenomenon at the same time. Then my cup wouldn't fit that cap. So then I got so then I was trying to say, like, where did I go wrong in my thinking? Like, why did I say a cup? Because I was thinking a cup, is impermanent and it has the nature of emptiness. So why wouldn't it fit? Why wouldn't it be a suitable subject?
And she brought up
the criteria.
And you also brought up the fact that if I had said empty of inherent existence is one of the compare impermanent and empty of inherent existence, I'd probably accept cup because it's both empty of inherent existence and it's impermanent.
Interesting.
So
and
when
we
say brought up the fact that, well, they're synonyms. So how, or one's the definition of the other. So what's so now I'm stumped.
Good. That's good, right? Because that's, it's all too easy if we don't think about this to like believe two things that at the end of the day don't line up, right? So that's why, so like this is good when it brings us to the right. So if I were some kind of teacher, I would see if I could kind of get this out of you, but I ain't no kind of teacher. So I'm just going to tell you what I think is going on. What I think is happening is that same old thing, which I think you'll see will come up again and again and again, I bet, if you're anything like me, between the subject and the predicate. Okay. Sne's example of the cup was correct.
Okay.
A cup is impermanent and a cup is empty.
But I didn't say empty.
You said
emptiness.
Emptiness, right? Aha, that's the thing. That's a great point. So is emptiness. The thing is that I think the way we use that word in English when we say emptiness like that.
But I can posit an emptiness.
You can posit. What do you have in mind?
Well, the emptiness of a cup is emptiness, but it's not a cup.
I see. Emptiness. It's very interesting. Typically, the way I've seen it is that that distinction between the parts of speech doesn't get drawn so clearly when it's being used in the predicate.
So you can't say
you can.
Emptiness of the cup is emptiness.
Sure you could. That for sure you could say that. What I mean to say is, like I find that it gets used very interchangeably. Like you'll say like, this is impermanence, or this is impermanent, this is emptiness, this is empty. Now I understand that there is a way to do it, but typically I don't like when my limited experience is that I think the translations kind of get changed around a little bit. And I think that has to do with probably the grammar of Tibetan. Now, having said that, I think if I were to hear, posit an example of something that is impermanent and emptiness, then I think I would take a cup to fit that because I would hear it that way.
Yeah.
Now, if you then push the point and say, no, I mean an emptiness, something that is impermanent and is an emptiness, then that's a very good point, you know. But still, when Sneh then came back and said, but what if I said empty of inherent existence?
Yeah.
Aren't they right? Then it seems like yes. They say, but aren't they synonyms? Now, if you're pushing that point about emptiness, then no, they're not. Empty and empty of inherent existence are synonyms. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Right.
But I also thought Venerable's point made sense because emptiness is a permanent phenomena, and if I'm comparing an impermanent, and I have to come up with something that is impermanent and is a permanent phenomena, then they're mutually exclusive. So I don't know in the debate if it goes back and forth like that, because I was agreeing with him, like, yeah, you're right. It's like I can't think of anything that is, you know, both.
Yeah, Jana?
The permanence of emptiness is not impermanent, but the emptiness is impermanent.
Say that one more time. The
permanence of emptiness is not impermanent, but emptiness is impermanent.
Okay. This is good. This is so much fun. Like we're talking, it feels like we're like talking in a debate.
We have a question.
Yeah. All right, here we go. Let me see if I can do my best. Let me for the moment, if I may, and then we'll come back around to it, leave out the emptiness. Let's talk about empty. Okay. I don't know if I can actually. Maybe English just doesn't work that way. The empty, because then we'd say like empty dash-ness, like it's.
And also for us who are grammatically challenged, what is the difference between empty and emptiness? Like to me, they're the same.
In English grammar, empty would be an adjective and emptiness would be a noun.
Oh, okay.
Kind of like saying beauty and beautiful. Like, you know, vice versa actually, and this, frankly, I guess it's like, I think there is like a blind spot that I'm noticing here for me, that I don't know enough about how it actually works in Tibetan. But it would come down to our defining our terms at the end of the day anyway. You know, like if nothing else, you could say, no, I'm referring to emptiness as a noun.
Emptiness, yeah.
Yes, exactly. But in any case, yes.
And the other thing I was at least confused about.
Oh gosh, don't give me the other thing yet. I haven't even gotten through this one.
Oh
but
no, it's part of this one.
Go ahead.
No, it's part of this one. So, you know, we were also trying to think like, am I confusing, you know, as you said, subject and predicate? But then I was also thinking like, what is the role of category? Like, am I also like confusing category? Like, what is category in debate? Is it such a thing?
How about this? Can you hold on to that one and come back to me with that one for a second? Okay. A cup is definitely empty of inherent existence, you know. And if those are synonyms, then it's empty. And if these are synonyms, then it's emptiness. That's just a conventional question. A cup is definitely impermanent. So if somebody said, posit something that is both impermanent and empty, you could say a cup, definitely. Now, the question arises, well, if a cup is impermanent and emptiness is permanent, then how can we say that a cup is empty, but it's still impermanent, right? What's going on? That's where the predicate thing comes in, right? When we say that emptiness is permanent, we're talking about emptiness as a subject. Emptiness, the subject emptiness, if you think about emptiness as the subject, it does have the predicate of being permanent, right? But emptiness as a predicate, it could be a predicate of anything that is permanent or impermanent. The fact that it itself is permanent doesn't mean that it can't be applied to something that is permanent or impermanent.
Like cup.
Like a cup. right? And I'll come back to Jana's piece. I'll come around to that. Think about it this way. Male is a gender, right? Gus is male, but Gus is not a gender. Male as the subject is a gender, has the predicate of being a gender, right? Now, so male as a subject is a gender. Gus as a subject is male as a predicate, right? That's why Gus is not a gender.
So we have to make sure that the two things we're comparing, are we comparing it as a
Predicates.
subject or as a predicate? So
When you compare
emptiness
two
here,
things, it's always as predicates.
it's always as the qualities.
Yes, it's exactly. So if you say, how do the two compare, impermanent and empty? You're talking about, are there things that are impermanent and things that are empty? You're not worried about what impermanent itself is or what empty itself is. That's a separate question.
So I was confusing those two things by using the word emptiness. In some ways, emptiness is not suitable to be a predicate.
That's my doubt. Like, it's not, it wouldn't I haven't typically seen something like that used as a predicate, but I'm afraid to say it couldn't be because I just don't know enough.
Yeah, because I mean, an emptiness of the cup is an emptiness. It's an instance of emptiness.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I'm just trying to think. I don't know if that would get into the question of isolates or what. I feel like there's a deeper question in there that I'm not qualified to answer.
Okay.
But what I'll say is that typically, stereotypically, we would use it as long as it's in the predicate position. That's kind of, then we're kind of looking at it as an adjective or what have you. In my very beginner's experience, that's what I've noticed. But there must be a way to do what you're asking, or there has to be, because otherwise there would be areas of inquiry that we couldn't access, which doesn't make sense. So there must be a way to do that. Like, for example, if you said, this is an empty, when you say emptiness, something that is emptiness, like there must be a way to say like a type of emptiness or something like that, because a cup is not a type of emptiness.
No.
But the emptiness of a cup is a type of emptiness.
It's an instance of emptiness.
Yeah. So however you do it grammatically, you can definitely do that. Yes. So I think the moral of the story is I really think you were both right.
Yeah, it depends on how we're using. So, but this is helpful to me on many levels. But one is, so because we haven't gotten to syllogisms per se yet, really. So, when you have the two compare, so what we're comparing are just predicates and we're looking for a subject.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's exactly.
And I don't think I'd really gotten that. So
yeah, I have to say I've never seen it explained that way.
Could you say that again?
I only say that to almost like as a, I don't know, like a please note, like don't, like it's not like you weren't paying attention. Well, a little bit that. I do feel really confident in this, like confident enough to kind of broadcast it like this, but like it's not like, gosh, how could you have missed that? It's just that that's a different way of saying what I think is there. You asked Snate to repeat that?
I was asking Venerable to repeat what she said,
Please.
something about you figured out we are looking for subjects.
Yeah, when we're comparing two things, we're looking for a subject that is one or both or neither those things. We're, identifying, is there a subject that's both? Is there a subject that's neither? Is there a subject that's one but not the other, and vice versa?
In terms of the predicate, the qualities we're looking for.
Yeah. So basically when I say, how do the two compare, empty and impermanent, it's as if I'm giving you two sentences with a blank. Blank is empty, blank is impermanent. That's what I mean by predicate, right? It's the tail end of the sentence. Blank is empty, blank is impermanent. And you fill in the blanks. Give me one word that you can plug in both, one word that you can plug in one but not on the other, one word that you can plug in the other but not on the one, and one word that you couldn't plug in either.
I guess I was thinking of it like red and car, like you're looking for things that are red, whether it's a car or not. And then you're also looking for cars, whether it's red or not, but you're also looking to see if there's such a thing as a red car. And to me, that impermanent and emptiness are like car and red. They're not the same thing.
Right. And if I'm getting what you're saying, what I would say is, if I say, how does it compare red and car? It doesn't matter if one is the other and the other, that doesn't matter. Like it's, again, the two sense, blank is a car, blank is red, right? Jana, and I stole you an answer from before, Jana.
Things that are red and car.
Things that are red and things that are a car.
Things that are a car, yeah.
You see? There are other ways to ask it if you actually want things that are red and car, but that's way down the line. Right now, we're just looking at blank is the thing I said, blank is the other thing I said. That's how the comparison of phenomena works. Let me come back to Jana's point real quick, or Jana's question about, could you say that the permanence of emptiness is permanent, but emptiness itself is not permanent? That is a fantastically Tibetan debate question to ask. And I'll tell you, for now, I'll just tell you kind of the answer, but then like the fun is to prove it, right? But no, what you'll find when you seek it all out is that you're right, that the permanence of emptiness is permanent, but emptiness itself is also permanent. But that is not to say that if blank is permanent, or that blank is empty, then necessarily that same blank is permanent. That's not necessarily so.
It's just the emptiness itself that's permanent.
Exactly, emptiness itself is permanent, right? Here's another one. Snoopy is, I have a dog named Snoopy. Snoopy is a dog. Dog is a species, but Snoopy is not a species. Right?
Right.
Or you know, there's a million things you could say, like, you know, running is a verb. Verb is a part of speech, but running is not a part of speech. Right? The things in the chat, are they questions or are they?
No, they were.
They're
Okay.
helpful to me because sometimes I can't write it down, and so Jenna's little thing.
Oh, that's very kind. Okay, thank you.
That is kind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to say, you know, when I was listening to Venerable Tendran and you, and I think Jenna discussing about this, it made me think about why Daniel Perdue has laid out, you know, the challenger defender narrative, because then when you say it, it's like there is something, the subject and X. Like he's forcing you to keep coming back to how do the two compare? There are four possibilities, you know, there is something, the subject X, there is something, you know, so it's like always reminding you, you need to find a subject that has the quality or not have the qualities you're comparing. So it just made me think, you know, just to get this narrative in my head, because then it makes it more clear. I'm always looking for a subject.
Yes, when you're doing comparisons of phenomena, yes, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
And I just, for Jenna's question, it just made me remember, like, I always get confused about, you know, emptiness being impermanent or permanent, whatever. And one teacher said, you know, the basis of designation is impermanent, but emptiness itself is a permanent phenomenon. And it always reminded me that it's always emptiness of something, and the of something is usually an impermanent phenomena.
You usually, in the examples that we'll probably be giving each other, because we live in this world of impermanent things, you know, but in theory, I mean, just since you've made it easier for yourself, if I can complicate it again, like if I were to say uncomposed space, the emptiness of uncomposed space, every piece of that is permanent, you see, but the emptiness of the cup, the emptiness is permanent, the cup is impermanent.
And I think it's very difficult because of the idea that we're used to things that have a dependent relationship to be impermanent, you know, that it's a dependent and
Yes.
emptiness, you can only have emptiness of a cup if the cup exists. So there's a relationship, but
Yes.
it's not like a dependent arising. It's not something that's produced.
It's a dependent arising, but it's not dependent on causes and
Yeah, I'm
conditions.
sorry,
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, exactly. And it's one of those temporary, permanent things too, because the emptiness of the cup comes into existence when the cup comes into existence and ceases to exist when the cup ceases to exist. But it's a little bit like the number of legs I have. My legs are always, the cells are coming, they're going, the legs are very impermanent, but the number of legs I have is exactly the same. It doesn't change from moment to moment until it changes completely suddenly. You know
So
what
the
I mean?
number is 2,
Exactly.
and that number is permanent.
Permanent. Yes. Like what created the number? Like what came together to make that number? Nothing. It doesn't work that way. Like what will the number disintegrate? Like when the number disintegrates, what will the pieces become? It doesn't, it's not like that. It's just a conceptual designation that can be validly applied.
To 2
You know?
legs. Yeah,
Exactly.
to those things.
Exactly. Exactly. Yes, Jenna?
That's kind of the logic of how God exists permanently.
I'm sorry, could you say that one more time?
Kind of the logic of how God exists permanently for a Christian, right? Because
How
it's
do you-
like number 2. That's
Oh,
how they.
that's interesting. Oh, that's very interesting. That's
Before I was
very,
going to say about the emptiness of the horn of a rabbit, but you said uncompounded space, but it doesn't matter.
sure. Yeah, no, yeah. The emptiness, like the emptiness of inherent existence of the horns of a rabbit. I mean, of course, that's permanent. Yeah. The basis of designation there is not permanent and it's not impermanent because it doesn't exist.
So is there
Yeah.
really an emptiness of the horns of a rabbit?
Yes, because, and this I find fascinating, it's empty of inherent existence, meaning if you go looking for the inherent existence of the horns of a rabbit, you're not going to find it. You're not even going to find the horns of the rabbit in the first place.
Yeah. That's really hard to get one's head around, is that you can use the same logic with something that doesn't exist.
Yeah, if it helps, you can notice that you can only ever use it with negative predicates, with predicates that are exclusions, right?
Yeah.
There's nothing you could say positive about, you could say the horn of a rabbit is this. You can only say it isn't this, and it isn't that, and it isn't the other thing. And when you say it's empty, because empty has built into it that it's not,
Yeah.
So when we say it's empty of inherent existence, we can say it's not inherently existent. It's not even conventionally existent.
Right.
Yes, Sneh?
It's a bit of a digression, but this horns of the rabbit,
Yes.
because I can think of it, it's a concept in my head, it's a conceptual thought.
Yes.
So then isn't it as a meaning generality a permanent phenomena?
Yes. On the one hand, we're getting so far ahead of ourselves. On the other hand, this is so much fun, isn't it? The concept of the horns of a rabbit exists.
Yes.
The concept exists. And the concept is a meaning generality, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Thank you. And but the horns of the rabbit, they're neither a meaning generality nor this nor that nor that, because there ain't any.
Yeah. Only way it exists is a meaning generality. And of course, it isn't that. A meaning generality is not the horns of a rabbit.
Exactly. It's like, imagine if I wrote you a check for $1 million, which I don't have. The check exists, the $1 million don't.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
and the check is made of paper. Like the check has properties, just like the concept has properties, but what it's referring to, there isn't anything.
So that's a real, because I find the horns of rabbit very difficult. I much prefer mirages because I've actually, seen things that, like, there might be water in the desert, like you see that mirage. So the mirage exists.
The
it's
mirage
a conceptual
exists.
Thought. It is
no, the mirage exists as a perception even.
I have a perception of a mirage. I don't know it, right? I really think there's water there.
Yes.
Right? So it only I mean, it's almost after the fact that becomes a mirage, because when I go, there's no water.
Well, it's sort of always a mirage, but it isn't always as water.
Right.
You know, it's the thinking it's water is the problem there, not thinking it's a mirage.
Yes.
I think mirages are harder because
I do too. I was about to say.
You know,
I think
it's like
ironically yours adds one more layer.
Okay, so let's stick to the horns of the rabbit, because the horns of the rabbit, are non-existent.
Or it could be like one of the traditional examples in the teachings that I find so evocative. It's like the color of the eyes of the child of a childless woman.
Yeah.
It's not blue, it's not brown.
Non-existent.
It's just not, there's nothing there. There's just nothing. There's a string of words, and it can raise up a string of images, perhaps up to a certain point in this case, but it's not referring to anything. Or here's an example from the Western philosophy tradition, the current king of France. And the question is the current king of France is bald, true or false? It's not true that the current king of France is bald. It's also not true that the current king of France has hair. It's just not, there's no current king of France.
There's no king. Yeah.
Exactly.
That's an easy example to relate to.
Oh, good. Good. Janet?
I have questions from the reading or some things that I marked.
Yes, that was yes. Thank you.
And one of them is about meaning generality. I was wondering if this abstract singular subject is the same as meaning generality.
Oh my goodness, I wish I could say yes. Okay, so here we go.
What page are you looking on, Jenna?
Oh,
page 82, it says abstract singular subject.
So it's not the same. And then the question gets asked, what exactly is the referent of the abstract singular term? And that, I'm happy to tell you, is the single hardest question in all of Tibetan debate. That was my experience. And then I was so gratified to find an article that talked about that at length and explained that that's widely known in Tibet as being the single hardest topic in all of Tibetan debate. So the abstract singular term, does everybody know what we're making reference to? Okay.
No.
So how about this? Maybe let me, hold on, because I had some notes about this that I thought might be useful.
I'm still trying to find where on the page it is.
Are you an electronic copy or the book?
Page 82?
Hard copy.
Yeah, okay, page 82.
Page 82. It's right after the horn of a rabbit. Does not have
okay.
Existence.
If you're searching for it on an electronic copy.
I found it. Okay.
I know, but Gus is electronic.
Oh, thank you. That's okay. I'm sorry. I wasn't looking for it.
You're looking for your
now.
notes. Yeah. Okay.
Yes. Thank you.
Some in the collected topics, and then it goes on like a chair in the room, but trying to understand the nature of an abstract singular subject is important too. The issue of the nature of the subject goes to questions of generalities or universals, the bases of designation of phenomena, and a consideration of the selflessness of phenomena in Buddhism, and so on.
Yes. So this is in the context. So Daniel Perdue, he's talking about the two forms of statement that exist in Tibetan debate. And there are the statements of quality, and there are the statements of pervasion. And the statements of pervasion, in an interesting way, I think they're easier. The statements of quality, even though they seem more straightforward, they're where like this really fascinating, infinitely juicy piece comes in. Because the statement of quality, it has a subject and it has a predicate, okay? In fact, sorry, let me backtrack for 1 second. Let me just kind of get this out of the way first for one moment. A statement of pervasion, the other one, statement of pervasion, has only 2 predicates. In place of the subject, it just says whatever. Like literally, it says whatever. So like whatever is A is necessarily B. So whatever, like it's just the dummy subject, right? What we're saying is if it is A, it's the predicate, then it is B, it's the other predicate. So a statement of pervasion is talking about how 2 predicates compare, you know? So whatever is a dog is necessarily a mammal. So whatever you can plug in into the sentence blank is a dog, necessarily you could also take that same thing and plug it into the sentence blank is a mammal, right? That's what a statement of pervasion is saying. And the statement of pervasion is only saying it in one direction. So if it's mutually inclusive, you have to say the other one too. Does that all make sense so far? Okay, so there's no subjects involved there. Like you have to provide the subjects yourself. You'll plug in whatever subjects you want. Now coming back, a statement of quality, that's where subjects come in. And there's, and Daniel Perdue, he explains there's 2 kinds of subjects that can be plugged in here. There are concrete singular terms, and then there are abstract singular terms. They're always singular terms. They're either not grammatically they can be plural, hold off on that, but they're either concrete singular terms or abstract singular terms. Singular in this context means that whether it's grammatically singular or plural, we're taking it as either just one thing or like one group, like we're, you know, like it's not just, if you say a pair of shoes, you're not talking about one shoe, another shoe, you're just talking about the pair of shoes, right? One singular in that sense, right? Concrete and abstract. Concrete is if it's something that you could physically like point to or look at or smell or feel like it's something, you know, directly experienceable. Abstract is the hard one. And the example that he gives that I think kind of shows it as best as it can be shown like that is the triangle is the principal figure in Euclid's geometry, right? Mm-hmm. Like let's say that you were reading a book about triangles. Somebody said, what is this book about? Oh, this book is about the triangle, right? Oh, which triangle, which one? I mean, it's not about any particular one. Oh, so it's about all triangles? And you might at first say, yeah, I guess so. But if somebody said, oh, so what does the book have to say about this triangle? Well, the book doesn't speak about that triangle. Well, I thought you said it's about every triangle. So that's not what you mean either. It's not about one triangle. It's not about every triangle. It's about triangle as an abstract singular. Then we want to say it's about the concept of triangle, but it's not. And that's the tricky thing. That's the tricky thing. If only if it were that, then we'd be all set, right? With triangle, it might be hard to make that distinction, but let's say it's about the chair, like the invention of the chair. Or even better, let's say that I said the chair was invented in ancient Mesopotamia. I don't know if that's true, I'm making that up. The chair was invented in ancient Mesopotamia, all right? Which chair, Gus? No, just the chair, you know? Oh, you mean the concept of the chair?
No.
Well, what they invented in ancient Mesopotamia was something you could sit on, but you can't sit on a concept. So that's not what I mean either.
Yeah.
Right? Was every chair invented in ancient Mesopotamia? Was this chair invented? No, this chair was only made a few years ago. It was not invented in ancient Mesopotamia. So what exactly are you talking about? Right? And I have to be honest with you guys. I've never yet found an explanation that's satisfied. I've never yet found like a way to explain it anywhere that I said, this clears it up. And as I understand it, I think in Tibet, they don't try very hard to explain it. They let the kids kind of grow into it and figure it out. And my experience has been that if you do give it all kind of time, you'll get an intuitive sense of what it is. Which is, I don't love that kind of answer, but but you'll definitely get to a point where you'll know it when you see it. And but more can be said. But yes, Sneh.
I was just gonna say, when I heard you trying to explain what a singular abstract could be, I just thought, like, that sounds so much like a universal, like a meaning generality, you know, it's like a table, a chair, but obviously not that particular table or not that particular, you know, it just sounded to me
Yes.
like that, like,
Yeah, that's sort of what a meaning
Yes.
generality is described as.
I'm sorry, could you say that again?
It's sort of what a meaning generality is described as, is sort of our,
Yes.
you know, when you finish all the non-table, what's left is, you know, this.
Yes. However, if we were to say it that way, if you were to say, when you say table, you mean the meaning generality table, right? Say, okay, yes, let's say. Then you'd say, all right, is a table impermanent? And if you said yes, then you'd say, then there is a meaning generality that is impermanent. And you'd have to say no.
Yeah, because that's instances of tables are impermanent, but our idea of table isn't.
Our idea of table isn't, but then you'd have to say that a table is permanent.
only the universal table is permanent as a meaning generality,
As a
So
category.
as a
in
category.
Buddhism, we don't have a universal table. Everybody's welcome to the table, but we don't have a universal table. I'll come back to that, but Jenna, I see your hand is up.
My understanding is that a meaning generality is the concept table. It's the
Something like that. Yeah, something like that. Yeah. The
And
meaning
it's just-
generality. Sorry.
Well, and it's permanent, so it's not, so it seems like, obviously, if the chair was invented in Mesopotamia, whatever, I can't even pronounce that
Yes.
word,
Yes.
that the word chair was not assigned to it at that time.
Sure.
So do we, when we say things like that, are we getting at the function of a chair? You know, that they invented the first thing that was used in the same way that we use chairs today, the function of using it for something to sit on. I don't know, does
Right.
that make sense?
I think what we're saying is that they came up with they kind of assembled, they put together the first thing that met all of the defining properties of what we would consider to be a chair, even if they never thought of it as a chair,
Right.
even by any given name.
Yeah.
You know?
It's the definition.
So what they invented in Mesopotamia met all of the defining characteristics, had all of the defining characteristics of a chair. The meaning generality chair does not have any of the defining characteristics of chair. So when I say the chair was invented in Mesopotamia, I don't mean that the meaning generality chair was invented in Mesopotamia.
So it's like we have, when we're thinking of something, we might generate a mental image of it that's not, you know, it's just
Right.
an image of our idea of a chair.
Right.
But there's something more. It's so fascinating.
Yes. It really is. It really is. And as it starts to click, there are all these like moments of joy where you're like, oh, like it's so great. It's so great. Jana, yes?
So the word chair is not the same as the meaning generality chair.
No. The word chair is what we would call the sound generality of chair. The sound generality of chair is basically the word chair, whether it's written or whether it's spoken in one voice, whether it's spoken in another voice, or whether it's sung. It's what all instances of the word chair have in common. That's the sound generality.
Even if it's written.
I think even if it's, because I'm saying sound generality, you're right. So I think technically, see, good. See, this is debate. This is good.
I missed what Jenna said. What did Jenna ask?
even if it's written, because I said even if it's written, it's like even if it's written, and I'm calling it a sound generality, right?
I think it's still a sound generality. I think I just
I-
read that the other day.
Oh, did you?
Because
Yeah.
there's no meaning to it. It is just
Right.
the representation of
Yes.
the letters that make up chair, the word
Yes,
chair.
exactly. So I think, yeah, I was going to say either it is still a sound generality, or else we could speak of like a slightly broader phenomenon that encompasses both of them. But for all intents and purposes, for now, definitely, like it's yes. Sneh?
I was gonna ask that question, which is like for us, like to me, there's almost no gap between sound generality and meaning general. You say chair or cow, and I think and see cow and chair.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Is
because you
there
know
really
what they are.
because I know what they are?
Yeah, because you have a meaning generality.
I
Of
see.
those.
So you're saying like a baby could say chair. I teach a baby to say chair, but it has no clue what a chair is. For them,
Well,
it's just a sound generality.
here's a different example of that. True story. My great grandpa, he came to Brazil. Like he went to Brazil. Came to Brazil. I want to say like in the 1920s probably, and he was a violinist, and what he wanted to do for a living when he got there was to play the violin in the movies. They were silent movies. Oh yeah, so definitely the 20s, the silent movies. And so he went to I'm sorry, the story turns out to be longer than I realized, but he went to this neighborhood, Cinelândia, it's where all the movie houses were back then. And so like everywhere you looked, it's a movie theater, right? And he noticed that all of the movie houses were playing the same movie, Hoje, Hoje, Hoje. He's like, what, And so now he got the sound generality, right? Because he like just by looking, he's like, okay, this, even though it's in different script and in different colors, this is the same word. So he got this sound generality, but he had to ask somebody, what is the name of this? What does it mean? He didn't have the meaning generality to go with it, you see? And so he asked somebody who also spoke his languages. He said, what is this movie? What is this that's playing everywhere? They said, that means now playing.
I love it.
Literally means today, but that's how you'd say now playing in Portuguese. So he had, in that moment, as a grown-up, right, he had a sound generality without a meaning generality. And do you ever like know about like, that like oh god, what is it called? That experience? That's when you have the meaning generality, but not the sound generality.
Yeah.
Can you
That
just
happens a
remind-
lot.
Sorry?
That happens a lot the older I get.
Right? So they are separable, but interestingly, the definition, I don't remember exactly now, but like the definition of a concept or something like that, there's something where the definition is that like that where like a meaning generality and a sound generality are suitable to be mixed.
Yeah, that
Right?
is the definition of conceptual consciousness. Yeah.
Conceptual consciousness, thank you. Right? Yeah. And Sneh, I think that goes to your point that for those of us who are verbal, it's so hard to disentangle those things sometimes. Like they seem to arise almost immediately because first they are mixed. We've mixed them up.
Your grandfather's example also actually reminded me of something in my own life of these two things. When we were, so in Hindi, mushkil means difficult. Like the Hindi word mushkil, if you hear it, it means something is difficult. And when we were in Egypt, I kept hearing, and there were a lot of Arab influence in India, but when I was in Egypt, everywhere we went, with the guide, and they were talking to me like mesh mushkil, mesh. And at one point I said to my guide, like, why is everything so difficult? And in Egyptian, mesh mushkil means not difficult.
Look at that.
So even though I knew the sound generality, I recognized the mushkil, but the meaning for them was not difficult. Whereas for me, it meant, and it was just such a good example of that now.
There you go.
Mushkil,
there you go.
So
there you go.
So an abstract, what's it called? An abstract singular.
Abstract singular term, yes.
Is
so what it actually is, I think I finally nailed it just the other day. Hold on. Okay. Well, it's okay. I don't know how helpful this is going to be right now, but let's say like chair. So chair as an abstract singular term, chair, I believe, is, what is it? It is chair from the point of view of its self-isolate.
Point of view, what isolate?
Of its self-isolate. This is why I said I don't think it's very helpful right now. This is only if you've already learned about self-isolates, which comes later.
He's
But
talking about them, that a phenomenon is a self-isolate.
self-isolate, yes. It's but I do think I'm going too far out of order. What?
It's just
Why is
joking
it brought
because
up here?
Sorry?
So why is it being brought up in this chapter?
It's did he bring up self-isolates in this chapter? Did he?
No, he brought up abstract singulars.
Oh, the
No,
abstract singular.
Also bring up self-isolate. He defined phenomenon somewhere else.
Here's what I think. Here's what I think is the answer to your question, Venerable. I think in Tibet, I think these things are often taught to young children. And when they like, if, I don't know if it happens, but if they ask, and when they ask, I'm sure they must sometimes, like, but what is it that it means? You can probably tell them, keep going and you'll see. And there's nothing much they can probably do about it. Okay. Whereas here for us, we're already coming at this with all sorts of ideas and all sorts of notions.
Yeah.
And if I'm being completely honest, my best guess is that Daniel Perdue is probably just saying like if he said like, look, you wouldn't get it yet, we'd be like, wait. So he's probably just telling us so that we can see, okay, I don't get it yet, and then we'll get it eventually. That's a very cynical kind of view, but no, I don't think it's coming from a bad intent by any means.
Well, if it's just something intuitive, then we just need more familiarity.
Yeah, it's sometimes I think what makes it hard to explain is that it's because of how it relates to words and not being the same as words, but being the referent of words. For that reason, trying to explain it in words makes it very confusing. Because the moment I say something, it's already kind of something else is built in. Jana, yes?
On page 80, he says that which holds its own entity. So I assume that's the same.
Is a phenomenon. That's a phenomenon.
That's not the same as self-isolate?
No.
That's what I mistook for self-isolate.
Oh, I see. Yeah, no. A self-isolate is, I'll just say this for now, it's the thing itself that you're referring to when referred to by the name that you're using to refer to it, irrespective of any of its exemplifiers. But in any case, Sneh?
So to your point, Daniel Perdue, further down on page 80, that same long paragraph says, however, we cannot sort out everything up front.
Yes, exactly. So thank you. So with that segue, let me do this. Let me mention a few points that I wanted to highlight from this chapter. So the first point is that, again, the subject in the statement of quality is either a concrete singular term or an abstract singular term. But the important thing there for now is that it's always a singular term, right? The important thing is that if we say chair, I don't mean every chair, you know? So either I will specifically make it clear that I mean one particular chair, or else I'll mean chair in a more general way, let's say, but still it's not every chair. That's the important thing. It's never going to be every chair, unless the only way that it will be every chair is if I say something to indicate that I mean every chair. And typically the way it's done in this translation is whatever is a chair, right? If I say whatever is a, then it means every, right?
Yeah.
In other words, another way of saying that is the only way that I'll mean every chair is if I'm making chair the predicate. Whatever is a chair is a chair. Chair is the predicate there. If it is a chair, then if it is a chair, is a chair. So chair is the predicate there. So then I mean every chair, you know, like that. If it's the subject, then we're not going to be talking about every chair. Does that make sense so far? Okay. We already said, even if the subject is a pair of things or a group of things, still the referent is that pair or group as an abstract singular, right? Because like this next part kind of follows from this, but this is kind of just saying the same thing from another perspective. Like what we just said, we were talking about the statement of quality from the perspective of the subject. From the perspective of the subject, it's always singular. To say the same thing again, but now from the perspective of the predicate. He talks about the two types of predication, collective predication versus distributive predication. Okay, all of these terms, by the way, come from Western philosophy. These are not terms that get used in Tibetan thought. But collective predication is when whatever you're saying is true of the whole thing as a group. It's not necessarily true of everything. So for example,
When you say not necessarily, oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I was saying it's not necessarily true of each individual thing that's in the group.
Yep.
So for example, these two shoes are a pair. Okay, that's true of the group. It's not true of this shoe, and it's not true of that shoe, right? Like a classic example from medieval Western philosophy is the apostles were 12, right? Because there were 12 apostles, the apostles were 12. Not a single one of them was 12, right? So it's collective predication, not distributive predication. Distributive predication would be if I were saying about each and every one. The only way to do distributive predication in Tibetan Buddhism, in Tibetan debate, is with the statement of pervasion. That's what a statement of pervasion does, right? A statement of pervasion is when the subject is multiple, it's all of them, and the predicate is distributive, right? So if I say whatever is a dog is necessarily a mammal, then what I'm saying is that every single dog is a mammal. Now, one more, and I was going to say this anyway before, so like one more point about the abstract singular. I think what I'm going to say next is enough to carry us through until we kind of get more of an inkling of what we're talking about. How can you understand the abstract singular? How can you understand the subject? You know, if I'm saying like, oh, it's so mysterious and intuitive and you have to blah, that. So like, how do we even know enough to talk about anything? Well, think about it this way. If I say to you that X is a mammal, what that means is that if I ask you, give me an example of a mammal, then you could say X. That's all, like that's kind of it, really, you know? So if I say, you know, the triangle is the subject of this book, you know, that means that if you say, give me an example of something that is the subject of this book, I could say the triangle. Maybe that's the only example I could give you, or maybe I could give you other examples too. But all I'm saying is that it's a fair example. All right. If I say running is a verb, means give me an example of a verb, running. That is correct. Right? So if I say, give me an example of something that is impermanent, you could say a cup. Give me an example, so a cup is impermanent. Give me an example of something that is empty, of inherent existence, you could say, so give me an example of something that's empty, you could say a cup, so a cup is empty. Now give me an example of something that is permanent, I couldn't say a cup, but I could say emptiness, so emptiness is permanent. You see?
So what? can you compare the two concrete singular and an abstract singular?
Yes, yes, thankfully, yes. They are mutually exclusive. Whatever is a concrete singular is necessarily not an abstract singular, and whatever is an abstract singular is necessarily not a concrete singular.
But sometimes the word will be the same.
Yes, exactly. So, and here's why. Because it doesn't matter, like what matters really with the word you use is that you're making, like, is that you're communicating clearly to the other person what it is that you're referring to, you know? So if I were to ask you guys, you know, is Gus a resident of New York State? You could validly say yes, because we all get that you're talking about me when you say Gus, right? Somebody could say, ah, ha, 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 I know somebody named Gus who lives in blah, 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 blah. But that's beside the point, right? So you need to, like, we're always talking about what you're saying, but in light of the context of what you're talking about, right? So in some cases, perhaps, arguably, you could say one word and it will be clear that you're talking about a concrete singular. And in other cases, it'll be clear that you're talking about an abstract singular. Here's the really good news. It won't make a difference. Don't worry about it. The logic is the same either way. You will never have to distinguish between abstract singulars and concrete singulars. He's only pointing this out to show you that, to kind of dispel some mistakes that you might bring in from Western philosophy, perhaps. Not that Western philosophy is mistaken, just that.
No, I get it. It's a different system. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
The important thing is that it be clear that you're talking about singular and it's the subject, and that the predicate is talking about that subject as a whole. So here's an example of that he gives. If somebody were to say, give me an example of something that is a table and a chair, right?
Yeah.
You can't.
No.
Because whatever is a table is necessarily not a chair, and whatever is a chair is necessarily not a table, right? So there's nothing that is a table and a chair. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Not even the subject, a table and a chair. Because for something to be, if it is a table and a chair, then it follows that it is a table, and it follows that it is a chair, right? A table and a chair is not a table. And a table and a chair is not a chair. So a table and a chair is not a table and a chair. Okay? This isn't some kind of cosmic claim. It's like, we're not saying something about the ontology. We're not saying something about like, so we're disagreeing about tables and chairs. We're not. This is just showing you how the structure is. Like this is how this would fit into the sentences here. If you wanted to make that point, you'd make it a different way.
Yeah, you can't say your subject can't be the table and a chair.
It can.
Okay.
But it's just a table and a chair. Well, it could. A table and a chair exists.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Give me an example of something that exists, a table and a chair. The set of a table and a chair. Okay. Yeah. You see? But give me an example of something that is a table and a chair. Ain't nothing I can give you. Right? Because, and this is my next point, that in this system, there's a very sharp distinction that's drawn between, and now I'm sorry, I'm gonna introduce some more Western concepts here, but between self-identity versus self-exemplification. Okay, bear with me here. This actually is really simple, what I'm about to tell you. everything that exists has self-identity. Everything that exists is identical with itself. This pillow is identical with this pillow. You know, these glasses are identical with these glasses. A table and a chair are identical with a table and a chair. Anything, okay? But some things exemplify themselves and some things do not. So for example, if I said, give me an example of a noun, I could say a bicycle. Bicycle is an example of a noun. I could also say noun. Noun is an example of a noun, right? But if I were to say, give me an example of a verb, I couldn't say verb. Verb is not an example of a verb. Verb is an example of a noun. Yeah? See if I can say that another way.
Does this have to do with when I was first studying? And, you know, this idea that you can't say that a person is both body and mind.
Right.
And so the teacher, the tutor was saying, let's draw two barrels and one has mind in it and one has body in it. You can't pull something out of one barrel that is both.
Yes.
And it still was like this idea, but you can't, it's very hard sometimes to quite be this precise.
Oh, yes. Oh, look, if it weren't, then we wouldn't need a book.
Right.
Right? Oh, sure. No, yeah. And in fact, this is the whole discipline of it. First, we need to understand more or less what we're supposed to be doing, you know, and then we'll only get it through practice. There's no other way, right? Yep. So, but let's take a step back one more time and let's say, so let me say it again this way. Any statement of quality in this tradition, you can always think of it as like, you know, A is B, A is B, A is B, A is B. So you can always think of it as, give me an example of B, A. You know, dog is a mammal. Give me an example of a mammal, dog. Snoopy is a mammal. Give me an example of a mammal, Snoopy. Right? Snoopy is a dog. Give me an example of a dog, Snoopy. Right? And so on like that. What that means is that A exemplifies B. That's just another way of saying it. It's just another way of saying it. Give me an example of B, A. Okay, so A exemplifies B.
Okay.
Right? Give me an example of a color, blue. Okay, blue exemplifies a color. Blue is an example of a color. Right? So some things exemplify themselves, but other things don't, right? So if you say, give me an example, this is maybe tricky, but I'll just go with like, give me an example of a word, word. Word is an example of a word, maybe, let's just say, right? Word is okay, so then word exemplifies word exemplifies itself. So word self-exemplifies, whatever. Right? Similarly, verb noun exemplifies noun. Noun is a good example of a noun, right? Polysyllabic is polysyllabic, right? So polysyllabic exemplifies polysyllabic. Now, monosyllabic, it's not monosyllabic. So monosyllabic does not exemplify itself. Therefore, we would have to say monosyllabic, right? I think I actually already just said it. Monosyllabic is not monosyllabic. Now it sounds like I'm saying some existential thing. Whoa, no, I'm not. I'm just using it as the subject versus as the predicate. Subject versus predicate, right? However, everything is self-identical. Monosyllabic is identical with monosyllabic, because here I'm just referring to the same thing itself twice, right? So this is where we get into the fun about definition and definiendum, because definition is not a definition. right? Definition doesn't define it. Definition is just, you know, I don't want to say it's a word because here in the system it's not, but still, you know, definition is not a definition. Definiendum, however, is a definiendum, because you can definitely ask me, what does definiendum mean, right? But you could also ask me, what does definition mean?
I had to write it out because
Good.
I was so confused. So I wrote for myself, like, I can't even say it. Definiendum.
Yes. Definiendum.
Definiendum is the thing defined by the definition. Like, that's my,
Yes.
the thing defined by the definition is a long word.
Yes. If it helps anytime.
Why does definiendum exemplify definiendum?
Because a definiendum is something that has a definition.
Okay.
And the word definiendum means having a definition, basically.
Okay.
You see?
Yeah, sort of. Yeah. I'll get
If
there.
it helps, and maybe it won't help, here's some Latin to help. Anytime in English you see a word that ends in endum or enda, it always means that which is to be. So addendum is that which is to be added.
Yeah.
Right? Definiendum is that which is to be defined. Agenda is that which is to be acted on. It comes from the Latin.
So since definition is also an object to be defined, so there is a definition of definition.
Exactly.
It's just that the word definition doesn't illustrate anything.
Because definition is something that is to be defined, definition is a definiendum.
Right.
Because definiendum is something that is to be defined, definiendum is a definiendum.
Right. Okay. Got it for a second. Yep.
That's it. You know, like
holding
like
on to this second. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know where I'm getting my Latin from. I don't know any Latin, but like I know that in Latin they also had an expression to have the eel by the tail. It means like when you have something for a second and then it's gone. Like that's the story of my life. So so ready? So here we go. So if you get all of that, then you should be able to get this. Ready? Definition is not a definition. However, whatever is a definition is necessarily a definition. Furthermore, definition is a definiendum. However,
say that again.
that definition is a definiendum. Definition is something that is to be defined, right? So definition is a definiendum. However, whatever is a definition is necessarily not a definiendum.
The way I keep that straight in my head is that the definition doesn't tell you what a thing is. It's just a word, right? So cup. You
That's
have
the
to define what a
definiendum.
cup is.
Definiendum. Cup is definiendum.
But wouldn't the definition of a cup be a vessel that holds water?
That's the definition. A vessel that holds water is the definition. Cup is the definiendum.
So the thing defined by the definition is the cup. The cup is defined by the definition. And then the explanation is the definiendum.
No.
So it's the other way around.
Other way. So
the way you have it written down is correct for what it's worth. But please.
So the word, just like cup. Cup is the definition of cup, a vessel that holds water. The definition is the vessel that holds water.
Yes, exactly. And so cup, the other part is the other one, so the definiendum.
So the cup is a definiendum. The thing defined by the definition. Okay.
Can you say a cup is just the mere label? I mean, is a definiendum just the label?
No, it's not. So this is actually what I was gonna say now. So this comes back to that other point I said. Do you remember how I said like there's three things, right? That I want to, all three of them come in this chapter. Okay. So this is, so the really good news is that we're getting through the thick of it, right? We're going to come out on the other side of this. All right. Definiendum and definition, I'm going to say it this way for dramatic effect, but it's not untrue. These were tragic choices of translation. They're not, it's not Daniel Perdue's fault, it's way before him.
Right.
These are just tragic choices of translation, because this is going to be so confusing for us, because these definiendum isn't such a big deal because nobody knows what that is anyway. But we all think we know what a definition is, you know, but that is not what is being talked about here. And so then we do end up getting confusing about definiendum because we're trying to relate it to the definition, and so it's just a mess. Here's what we're actually, I wish we could just call it something else, but what can we do? Here's what we're actually talking about, okay? Let me see if I have a simple, let's go with the glass. And let's just say, can we just pretend that the definition of a glass is a vessel for, I think, what did you say, a vessel for holding water?
To hold water.
Let's go with
liquid.
that, right? Let's just go with vessel for holding water just for now, let's pretend, okay. There's that phrase, a vessel for holding water. That's neither the definition nor the definiendum. There's the label cup, the word cup, the sound generality cup. That is neither the definition nor the definiendum. Okay, the definiendum is this object,
The actual object,
which is the cup. The actual object that is the cup. That's the definiendum, and the definition are the qualities that are, you know, in the nature of this object, that are what makes me say that this is a cup, that what make it what it is. Basically, it's the fact of its holding water, the fact of its being a vessel that holds water. Words have nothing to do with it, really.
Yeah, but the words are just what we use to communicate the function of that object.
Exactly. The words, there is no way for me to convey to you what the definition of it is without me using words, you know? Yeah. But the point isn't the words. The point is the qualities that the words are pointing at.
The meaning.
That's the definition.
Yeah.
And the object that the words are pointing at, that's the definiendum, right? That is not what the word definition means in English. In English, the word definition means something along the lines of a string of words or an explanation or something like that. Here, the definition is not an explanation. Definition is qualities, it's attributes, right? So triangle, the definition is something about a figure with three sides, right? So the definiendum is the triangle. The definiendum is that object that's there, right? And the definition is it's the having of three sides. It's that quality which allows you to conceive of it as a triangle. It's you know, it's what makes it what it is. It's what makes it a triangle as opposed to something else. Mind is
just redefine definition to fit this definition because it makes more sense.
Totally. It's just that unfortunately, I'm sorry to say, at least if you're anything like me, I think it's kind of ingrained. So like we'll keep forgetting momentarily. So anytime it seems totally confusing, it's good to stop and say, hold on a minute. Am I, like, if you're dealing with the concept of definition, the concept of, if you're considering those things and you're confused, say, wait, what do I actually mean here by definition? What do I actually mean by definiendum? Just good to remember to check that, because it for me, it keeps slipping sometimes.
It's funny because it seems like you could debate whether or not label and definiendum are, you know, the same.
Yes.
Cup, you know, and the label cup, I mean, that, you know, it's getting at, because we just, you know, it's merely labeled, but so is it. But even the definiendum is something we base on, you know, the thing that we decided to make use of or something. I mean, it's you know, if we never needed a cup, we would never come up with
right
this thing that holds water. I mean, either.
Yes, totally. I think one would do very well to debate that, in fact, you know, and And one thing to consider in that debate would be, was Shakespeare right or wrong when he said that a rose by any other name would smell as sweet?
Yeah.
Is the rose the label, or is it something else? But whichever way that debate turns out to be, to whatever conclusion we turn out to come to that debate, the point is that the definiendum is the object that has the qualities, and the definition are the qualities that that object has that make it what it is.
Yeah.
So this cup, it has many qualities. Some of its qualities make it a cup. Others of its qualities make it transparent. It's not the same qualities. Right? The qualities that make it a cup are the fact that it's a vessel capable of holding water. The qualities that make it transparent are the fact that you can see through it, right? But the fact that you can see through it isn't what makes it a cup, and the fact that it can hold water isn't what makes it transparent, right?
The fact that it's impermanent isn't.
Exactly.
Right. Okay.
Exactly. And ditto, like the fact that it's empty of inherent existence, the fact that it's a form of physical phenomena, like there's countless, So the definition isn't the word, the definition is the qualities that make it that thing. So the it's being a vessel for holding water is the definition, the quality is the definition that makes it a cup, this object, cup. The fact that you can see through it, that quality is the definition that goes with the definiendum, transparent, which is the object that is transparent, right? It's not just a word or just a concept, right? Snee, did you have your hand up a moment ago?
No, I was just like, in listening to the conversation between you and Venerable Tendron, it also reminded me of, our exposure to the basis of designation and the label, like, and both are conventional, right? Both, we just have agreed that, we would call certain things. And it just made me think that, because I was thinking, like, when we talk about qualities and stuff, you look at a basis and you think, does it have the qualities in order for it to be suitable to be called human? Right? And go through that logic. And so I'm not sure where I'm going with this. It was just a thought that came in my head.
I have a scent of where you could be going with this, which would be a fascinating place if you were. But I'm not going to tell you where it is because we're not going to have time to go there anyway. But I think maybe what you might be getting at perhaps is that you can already see in this very, complicated but basic in the sense that we're just talking about what is a definition, what is the definition. We're not getting into anything philosophical, but here already you can see the seeds of how we'll get to emptiness.
Yeah.
Right? Like even like just from the ground up, we can already start to see how things, you can already start to suspect, wait, there's something funny here. I can't put my finger on what it is, but there's something funny here. And that will get us eventually to emptiness. Now, one thing that's very funny, it occurs to me now, is that we as Westerners, we often learn stuff about emptiness before we ever learn anything about this, which is really funny if you think about it, because when we're now learning this, we're already asking questions about emptiness, which is, it's a little bit like if we were just now learning the alphabet, and we were raising our hand and saying, wait, but how do ampersands work? Or like, it's like, okay, and after the D comes the E, okay, D-E, and somebody said, wait, is it true that the E is only silent in letters of French, in words of French extraction? It's like, hold on a minute, right? I'm not criticizing at all. I'm just, I say that because I think it's helpful for us to notice that, and to, if we find like we're getting confused, then to let go a little bit and just work on the basics, like almost pretend we don't know stuff that we already know a little bit. But Sneh, you had your hand up.
Oh, I was just going to say also, like when we talk about all this, it just makes me think about, and I think, we've heard teachers say about language, like language is central to our understanding and how we use things, but language itself, like when you were using about, can you have a table and chair together? And I was thinking, you know, I have a spoon and a fork in one thing, right? When you go camping, it's called a spork,
Spork.
right? So I was thinking like, but, you know, it becomes so complicated, right? What if you've never seen a spork before? And I know that you have two things that can go together, whereas my grandmother probably had never seen anything like that, right? And for my grandmother,
Yes.
anyway, you eat with your hands. I mean, she'd be like, what am I going to do with a
A
fork?
spoon, much less a
Or,
spork.
yeah, or chopsticks, you know,
Yes.
all of that. So it's just like made me think about how language is, you know, when we say like, oh, it's inexpressible and stuff, so much has to do with how I decide to use language and understand language and the meaning of language in my life.
Yes. Oh, that's called the Humpty Dumpty School of Semantics. Was I saying this in DB? I don't know. I said this recently somewhere, I think. So
You're
in
muted,
college,
Sheila.
oh,
I was just gonna say, yes, you did. You brought it
oh,
up.
I did, right?
Yeah.
I'm sorry if I repeat myself, but
I didn't hear it, so
Well,
please
I
repeat
can
it.
use it over and over again.
oh, good. Well, so in college, I majored in linguistics, and one of the classes was semantics. And one of the schools of semantics is called the Humpty Dumpty School of Semantics. And that's because in Lewis Carroll's book, Through the Looking Glass, which is the sequel to Alice in Wonderland, Humpty Dumpty is a character. And I forget if I'd known that I was going to say it again, I'd have looked it up, but I forget exactly what the instance is, but he says something like, imperviousness, that's what I say. And she says, I don't think that word means that. And he kind of gets very salty. He says, when I use a word, it means exactly what I want it to mean, neither more nor less. Right? And that's true, right? That's true. I mean, that's literally true, right? Literally used to mean one thing and now it means something else. And whether we like it or lump it, there it is, right? Because we in this case, it wasn't just an individual, it was a society. As a society, even no matter which way either any one of us voted, we agreed that it now means something else. And so, so that's why we always, like, if we're going to debate something, we always need to have clarity together on what our referent is for the terminology that we're using, you know? Because if I say cup, if when I say cup, I really mean an egg, you know, then this isn't a cup, right? But this still has the same quality of being a vessel that holds water, that makes it that object that it is, which a minute ago I was calling cup. No matter what I call it, that part doesn't go away just because I change my referent, right? I can come up with a new collection of sounds to connect to that definiendum, but the definiendum still is what it was, and so is the definition, right? That's the thing, I'm holding the definition of the cup in my hands, which isn't something you can really do in the West. Now, I know we're out of time, so let me ask you guys this, just like I asked last time. Now, next time, it's going to be our last session of this pilot program.
So quickly.
I know, right? I know,
really?
right?
I thought it was.
Is it?
I thought it was 5 weeks. Was it 4?
It's 5
It is
weeks.
5 weeks.
Next week is 5
Yes,
weeks.
Didn't think so.
No,
I
there's
doubt.
Am I crazy?
Am I
wrong?
checking? Yes. No, you're right. October 10th is the last class. This is our 4th class.
Yeah. I have notes from 4 sessions, including today. So
Wow.
yeah,
That
isn't
was
crazy?
fast.
Well, it's October. That shocked me too. So
Right. 2021, by the way. So with that in mind, I still wanted to give you guys the option of whether you wanted to go ahead and read the next chapter, or not, you know, like the pros and cons, like that I can see, like the pro of reading our chapters, that we're continuing to move forward into new material, you know. The con really is that we're just going to have the one session to be able to talk about it, and it's a very rich chapter. There's a lot in it. But what are your thoughts? Does anybody have any feelings about it?
I could still use practice with just, you know, comparing things like we were doing, making up our own and realizing, oh, in that
Yes.
process, we learn
We
where
didn't
we
know what we
might.
were doing. It's fun.
Good. Yes, it is a lot of fun, I think.
Okay,
Especially
well, I
when
could
we-
probably use, since I was all over the place tonight, clarity on what the 3 points on this, in this chapter, that you wanted us to take from this chapter. You know, and if you
3
think
points,
you can do that and introduce some new points from the next, in the next chapter, I'm game for anything. So
I'm happy to do whatever it is you're asking me. Could you run that by me one more time? I didn't quite
you
understand.
said there were 3 things in this chapter you wanted us to.
Sorry. What I meant was that since the very beginning of when we started meeting, I said there's 3 warnings that I give you. There's 3 points that I want to warn you about, and that they all came together in this chapter. You know, those 3, just for the record, are 1, subject versus predicate. The other is definition, definiendum don't mean what you would think. And the other is just about the grammar, and that I would suggest not worrying terribly much about it. Are we talking about a chair, or, you know, like I would just focus on what it is that we're saying, regardless of the words. But we could definitely plan next time to review this material again, to kind of keep maybe rehearsing or getting clarity on what it is that we're talking about, subject and predicate and this and that. We could plan next time to do breakout rooms for most of the session, and do comparisons of phenomena. So how about this? Raise your hand, please, if you would prefer to move on to the next chapter for next week. That's good. That's fine. No problem. And raise your hand, please, if you'd like to stay on this for a little bit longer. Oh, man. Okay, now there is a problem.
Now, we shouldn't move forward if there are people who are not comfortable with the material at hand. I have an opinion about everything. I'll shut up now.
No, please never shut up. That's a very valid and helpful thought. So I think then, if you guys will, like, I mean, whatever I'm about to say, I'll say if half of you guys will forgive me. I'm thinking let's stick on this a little bit more, because it will be hard to do much that comes after. Like let me put it to you this way. In practice, I think the more practice on these points, the better. These are the hardest points of all, and it will give us a solid foundation, right? So let's stay on this another week. In which case, what I'll ask you guys to do this week is to continue doing exercise 5.1, which is the exercise from this chapter, which is just about noticing and, you know, but also continue, just as last time, I'll read it to you the way I wrote it down. Throughout the week, identify pairs of predicates that compare in each of the 4 ways. No worries about the 2 subtypes that are without anything that is neither. And then using those, continue going through and practicing all the exercises in chapter 4 throughout the week. If you can do it with a partner, all the better. If not, keep doing it on your own, right? And if you feel like, if you were on the group that was ready to move on, then maybe one thing you can do is you can, as you do that, notice in doing that, which statements you're making are which type. You know, like as you're doing that, you'll be making certain statements of quality, you'll be making certain statements of pervasion. So you can practice noticing that to get more experience with that too. Okay. Any questions about any of that?
Homework is to do comparisons of the 4 ways.
So exercise. So first of all, continue exercise 5.1. and then come up with your own pairs of predicates, and then practice using all of the exercises in chapter 4, basically,
Okay,
which is the comparison of phenomena.
got it.
Okay. All right. So let's just dedicate. I'm sorry for keeping you guys
No, thank
long.
you.
So you may have noticed that tonight we expended some mental effort in thinking about these things and wondering about these things and trying to come up with, in contributing solutions and thoughts about these things. Of course, there was also the verbal effort in doing all of that, and there's even the physical effort of staying seated upright, of staying in view of the camera. So we use the 3 doors of body, speech, and mind. And every single movement of the mind, every single movement of the speech, every single movement of the body plants karmic imprints in the mind stream. And each karmic imprint will ripen into experiences in the future. And so we think, may they ripen only in ways that will bring us deeper and deeper into a correct understanding of reality, both on the surface level and the deepest level. And may they bring us deeper and deeper into a pure, expansive, genuine motivation to give benefit to all beings, so that in combining those 2 things, the wisdom and the method, we can accomplish enlightenment, so we can bring all universal sentient beings to perfect enlightenment. Thank you very much. All right, everybody. So I hope you have a
Thank
great
you.
week. And I look forward very much to seeing you next week.
You too,
Right.
guys. Thank you
Oh,
so
and
much.
by the
Thank
way,
you, everybody.
yeah, and by the way, let me just say, next week, I'd also love to hear any feedback that anybody might have in terms of what you think would be helpful for us to do in the future with this, because I really do, like, I can't say that this is or isn't, but I haven't been able to find any other precedent for the type of thing we're doing. So, so at the very least, I don't have anything that I can base it on. So it would be very nice to know what you think would work. So thank you again, and have a great week.
You too.
Thank you.
You too. Thank you, guys.
Nice to see everyone.
Good night.
Thing to do with the videos beside watch them?
Sorry. Sheila, you may want to stop recording just so we don't get recorded.